Welcome back. I'm so honored that you would take the time. I get your emails, I get your texts, and I get your Facebook. If you want to Facebook me, I'm close to 5,000. Come on, get me over the hump. Go to Facebook and friend the coach, Coach Ron Tunick. So my next guest is a friend. So that's a disclaimer. He's a friend. So let me say this to you, my dear audience. If I could give you an edge, if something that Freeman's going to say today will change your life, and now you have an edge. Now you're a little bit better than you were 10 minutes ago. I think you'll keep listening to the show. So recalibrating your life, I love that when we had lunch today. So all of us should recalibrating our life about every week. I mean, we should sit down, and I wrote a book called The Thinking Room, so I understand the process of thinking. We don't. Most of us don't think. We're just become reactors. But at lunch, we talked about recalibrating your life, and I want to talk about that a little bit because that really touched me when you mentioned that word. What do you mean when you say, Freeman Michaels, what do you mean when you say recalibrate your life?
Well, you know, self-reflection, being aware of our patterns, isn't something we do. We get caught in patterns, and even if we're only mildly miserable, we organize back to our comfort zone. So the idea of going through a process where we're very consciously taking ourselves out of our comfort zone, you know, it came up because you said you were on a diet. And for me, a diet is a very tricky thing. Oftentimes, a diet is motivated out of a sense there's something wrong with me or something needs to be fixed. So we go through a process.
I got the fear of getting diabetes. I got high blood sugar. I'm on fear, baby.
Yeah. Okay. So
every meal is like life or death now.
So okay, that's a motivation. Something is wrong. Something needs to be fixed, and so we go on a diet to fix it, and we restrict ourselves for a period of time. And the minute we hit that period of time is over, we know 99% of diets don't work. Everyone gains the weight back, right? So what I said is there's two ways it works for me. One is to make a lifestyle change, to recognize that there's something I fundamentally want to shift, and I'm committed to doing it for life, and it works in that way. But the other is to recalibrate, which is really about just taking a moment where we eliminate things, in this case from the diet, to be able to look at its effect in our lives, to interrupt the unconscious patterns, to become conscious of them. And again, the word recalibrating is a way of self-reflecting. And then what we recognize is that the patterns around food, in this case, have served a valuable purpose, right? They've been the best way we've known how to cope or whatever. And so the minute we recognize that's the pattern, that's what the need is that I'm utilizing food to, quench, then we can make choices, I call them practices, to replace them with something that meets the need in a more healthy way.
All right, stop. So his voice is incredible. He is his name is Freeman Michaels, and they can find you on Facebook. They can find you on YouTube.
Yeah.
Maybe one of America's really top motivational speakers. Interrupt the patterns. Let's start there. How does one interrupt their patterns? Because all of us get in a rut, whether it's at work, whether it's eating, whether it's personal relationships. We all get in a rut. We all have a hard time of interrupting our patterns. How do we do it?
Well, I mean, oftentimes it helps to have a coach. I mean, this is part of what I do in life is people hire me because they realize there's something.
People can't afford me.
Yeah. Well, and or you, and someone who can help us see ourselves more clearly. Or we go through a program, a process. And through that process, we begin to self-reflect.
Why don't they hire us together at $10,000 an hour? And then,
sure, Coach.
Only work with rich people.
That's right.
All right, so keep going. This is important. This is serious.
So the first step is we become aware that we have the pattern.
Okay.
And here's one of the big challenges is most of us hold it as a problem. The minute you hold it as a problem, you've locked the limitation in place. Let me explain what I'm talking about. It's not a problem, it's a pattern. So it reflects something, and that's what we have to dig to find out. I was saying before that, using food to cope is a way that a need gets met, right? I'm using food to cope with stress,
lonely,
anxiety,
I'm sad.
Or feelings, sure, of course, right? Emotional eating. So unwinding that is becoming aware that that's what the pattern represents. Oh, if I go to the cupboard and I want salty and crunchy, I know it's anxiety. If I go to the...
Is this true?
Absolutely. If I go to the freezer and I want ice cream, I know it's more like feelings.
I want the ice cream. I want the ice cream.
Yeah, so yours might be...
And chocolate. I'm like a chick, really.
Yeah, so yours might be a way that you've learned to cope
I'm
with
a chromosome
and manage
away from being a chick.
some emotional needs, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so...
I need hugs, too.
Yeah, so if you went and created a hug practice and you became aware that you were craving ice cream and instead you went and got everyone in the house to hug you, you might find you don't need the ice cream. I mean, this is
This could be a new business for me. A hug practice. No,
Yeah, I love it.
I love it.
Yeah.
$5 a hug. I'm a good hugger,
I'll
too.
tell you a story. So this is not to do with food.
No, I'm a good hugger. Let's stay with the hug.
When I saw you.
Yeah.
But let me offer this. So I became aware that my wife says I'm cheap. I like to think of it as fiscally responsible, but she calls it cheap. And I don't want to be cheap. That doesn't fit with...
I bought lunch. You didn't even reach for your wallet.
I know. It was very kind of you, Coach. You beat me to it. You did that very quickly. What I want to say about this is I recognize that I had a pattern of withholding, especially in the exchange of money. And so I didn't want to do that. And I wanted to make a conscious choice that I wanted to exchange a different kind of energy. So instead of Federal Reserve notes, they're called Federal Reserve notes, I call them thank you notes. And every time I offer them for good and service, I say thank you. And so I created a practice of gratitude, very conscious, very deliberate in the way I exchanged currency, right, energy. So that's a practice that's very specific to how I want to show up in the world. You want another one?
Yeah.
Okay, first of the year,
I'm taking notes.
I realized that I show up as judgmental. Like, I very quickly...
No, are you judgmental?
Well, no, I'm committed to not being judgmental.
I don't see you as judgmental.
I agree with you, and that is my commitment. So I'm more embodying the commitment to being open-minded.
Are you judging me now?
Pause for a sec. I'm going to tell you how this works. So when I find myself judging, I use a practice called Ho'oponopono. It's a Hawaiian spiritual practice. And just in my head, like let's say I walk into a supermarket and I find myself judging people. I say, I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. In my own head, I go through a process of asking for forgiveness for the thought that I'm holding about this person. And what it does is, yes, it diffuses my energy personally, but I have noticed that people around me warm up to me. I have and what you said, I can't imagine you being judgmental. No, Coach, because I don't show up as judgmental in the world. But that's not because I'm not a judgmental person. It's because I recognize that the patterns of judging people don't serve what I'm up to. And so I made a conscious decision, a choice, to create a practice to interrupt that pattern.
Wow, his name is Freeman Michaels. I mean, I can't write any faster. The show is called The Business of Life, and I'm so honored that you would take your time to listen. Brought to you by Lisa's Tax Service and the Los Angeles Jewish Home. So, when you look at why we get stuck, why do we get ourselves in these stuck patterns, whether it's a personal relationship? I think most of us have a difficulty with conflict. We just can't seem to say no. We can't seem to confront the problem, confront the person, and we just hide.
Well, I'm going to give you another tool.
Am I close there?
Well, maybe. So part of what has to happen in life is, and this is actually something I do in my work with companies, my company, Group to Team Leadership Solutions, we work with companies helping them shift from operating as a group, which is operating out of self-interest, to operating as a team, which is operating out of shared interest. Now, what's required to do that is a very high level of respect. At the lowest level of respect, we have tolerance, right? At the middle level, we have something we call civility. You could call it good manners. It's a way of interacting, but we keep some separation between us and other people. We're friendly, but we're not intimate. The higher level is high regard. That's where we really care about each other. Now, what's required if you're going to have high regard is you have to have good communication, which means if something is bothering you or something someone does is bothering you, you have to say something. But what we do oftentimes is we look to confront. Now, confront is about making someone wrong. I offer that we change the language. I call it carefronting. So I care enough about you, Coach, and I'll model this, that I want to talk to you about something you said yesterday, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what you meant by what you said, but when you said ... I'm making this up, I felt uncomfortable. It felt like, right? And so I'm not telling you did anything wrong. I'm expressing how it feels to be me.
Okay, you may remember my IQ is not like yours, so you got to go slow on the lineman. So in the workplace, you have familiarity. In the workplace, and when you have familiarity, what occurs? Contempt. Right?
Yeah. So
let me just finish my thought.
Yeah, of course.
So how do you deal with a workplace where you're spending more time with your work partner, people at work, than you are at home? So I love what you just said. You have to go, there has to be respect. So when you get to know somebody that well at work, and some people aren't doing their job, some people are sloughing off, some people are taking longer breaks, that's where things break down. How do you change that in the workplace when you don't have a high regard?
Yeah, well, the commitment is to holding each other in high regard. So I'm going to tell you quite literally what we do. When we work with an organization and we take them through this process, now high regard is just one piece of the puzzle. There has to be a shift from an orientation towards self-interest to an orientation towards shared interest. So the first decision is that we're going to shift to being a team. And when you shift to being a team, it's not a shift you make once and it's over. It's a shift you have to constantly make. Because look, we're going to organize back to group. We're going to organize back to the known. This is slightly different than what we've been programmed to do in life, right? So there has to be a way you're constantly orienting back to team, and you're going to fall off track. That's natural. The thing about commitment is it's recommitment. It's not about making a commitment. That's easy. People do it all day long. How do you recommit when you fall off? That's the harder challenge. So team becomes the orientation. So there's a lot of checking. How are we doing? We create a vision, practices, and standards. You remember this, Coach, because we did some of this. A vision is quality-based, right? What is the quality of experience we want to generate? Then practices are things we consciously do that express the vision. And then standards. So a respect standard would be something where we commit to the standard, which is I commit to holding you in high regard. Will I slip off that? Sure. But I keep coming back to the commitment. And for example, gossiping. That's not holding someone in high regard. So when I start to get into a conversation about you that feels like gossip, I have this standard and I know I'm breaking it. So my job then is to interrupt that pattern and clean it up. Right then, right there, because I have a standard which is high regard.
His name is Freeman Michaels. The show is called The Business Life, maybe the best radio station in America. And I say that because the owners give so much back to Southern California. The station, if you're just driving through Southern California's KHTS AM 1220. Wow. I mean, where do I start on your last conversation? Well, first of all, I love to gossip.
Yeah.
I gossip all the time.
It's a false bonding pattern.
Oh, it is?
So what your need is
Rich and I gossip at Starbucks every morning. You want us to stop gossiping?
I do. What I want you to do is recognize the need is connection. And what happens is in the group mindset, which is again what we naturally orient towards, we do an us and them. In grammar school or middle school, we call them cliques. And this is what people do. They naturally form into cliques. But the problem with a clique is someone's in and someone's out.
Well,
right?
You're out right now.
I am out.
I can tell you right now, Rich and I might get you in our clique, but you're out right now.
Depends.
Yeah,
it depends.
All right, so we recognize that we're creating, we call them microgroups or cliques.
And they're at work.
They're at work, they're in every area of our life, right? And so those interrupt team. They interrupt community. They're not good for us. So what we want to recognize, the need is for connection. So we want to find healthy bonding patterns. And so you actually do this, Coach. You're great at complimenting people. You're great at recognizing what's great in someone. It's actually one of my favorite parts about you as a person.
Well, I love people.
You genuinely love people. I get.
Yeah. I love you, too.
So I'm guessing, and I've been out with you, there's a lot. I've never actually seen you gossip, so I think you're misusing the term.
Oh, no, I gossip. Trust me.
All right, well, the point here is to recognize what we do want and promote that.
The part of me you don't know is I'm shallow. Right. And I will gossip.
Right. So that's a part of you, just like the part of me that judges, that I'm committed to changing because it doesn't serve what I'm up to in the world.
But I love my shallowness.
Yeah, well, I love your depth, and I love the part of you that loves people. And where your shallowness gets in the way of that, then you may want to take a look at it, and you may want to develop some patterns practices to interrupt the pattern of gossiping. because it doesn't represent high regard. It doesn't build the kind of connection you really want. It's a false bonding pattern.
You're listening to the show we call The Business Life, and my dear friend, I wish you were with me every day. I wish you were my co-host. Freeman Michaels, maybe America's number one motivational speaker. He runs a group called Group to Team. You can go to YouTube, Group to Team on YouTube. Watch your YouTube blow up now.
Well,
your YouTube's going to blow up.
They can go to the website, grouptoteam.com.
Oh, they have a website?
Grouptoteam.com.
Okay, grouptoteam.com. I'm going to go there. Okay. And your partner, Susan Leahy, with she's got all kinds of designations. That's great. Oh, I didn't know you had a master's degree.
I do.
That's great. So we're talking about life here today on KHTS. It was my honor in the first segment to have Rich Samuels with us. He wrote, you've been on radio for years. People only tune in like every 7 or 8 minutes. Did you know that?
That's why you
repeat. Get it? Yeah, repeat. So
the podcast, so it's a little different.
Well, the podcast is different.
Yeah.
He wrote the trilogy, 3 books. The first book, My Life at the Bottom of the Food Chain. Go get it. It'll change your life. Trust me, if you've got teenagers like I do. So, Freeman Michaels, our society right now is in a little disrepair. Would you agree or disagree?
I think we're in a time of tremendous change, and with that, look, there's a breakdown that precedes a breakthrough. I think there's so many amazing things on the horizon that, there's some parts that feel disjointed, which is actually the good news. So lots of the quote-unquote problems we see in our world today are signs that something is going to change. There's something that we're evolving towards. That's my belief.
I think that technology, which I love, is hurting our society.
It's both. It's got a plus and a minus. It's got positive benefit, and it's also got a cost.
Well, let's get back to being aware of the pattern. So when you go to dinner, and I know we've talked about this, you have 4 people at dinner, wife and 2 kids, everybody's on their phone.
Yeah, the pattern is distraction, and it's an addictive pattern.
Do you know why?
Yeah, it's avoiding intimacy. So it's easier to go into isolation than it is to stay in a relationship with people. This is the same issue when we talk about groups and teams. Groups, everyone's got their siloed interest, right? They've got their role within a department. I was talking to you at lunch about the company Gore, the folks that make Gore-Tex. Since the 1950s, when they were established, they've had what we call a collaborative leadership model. They don't hire people for positions. They hire people who are talented, and then they have them self-organize into roles and responsibilities and positions, which is the collaborative leadership model, which is the team leadership model. So in that model, people interact in a very different way. They're meeting in a they're meeting in a different way, but they're also complementing each other in different ways. I diverged a little from your question, because your question was what's going on with distraction and where people are more comfortable in their own little world than interacting. There's a risk.
Well, I was going to the fact that Twitter's 140 words. That we got to take a break here in a couple minutes, but. And this is a big subject, but people are so hooked on something. Is it instant gratification they're hooked on?
Yes, I think so. And it's also 140 words. We're thinking in sound bites these days. So people don't necessarily think deeply about things. This is what I see in our political world. I don't want to talk politics, but I will say that it's soundbite driven. So everyone likes a soundbite. No one's thinking deeply, especially in this election campaign, about issues. And so there's no discussion about solutions. It's all just pontificating, but in these little chopped up bits that get a lot of attention and traction on places like Twitter. So look, this is uncomfortable.
But you have to come back in a month. We have to take a break, because what you're saying is so factual that if we're living in sound bites, we're living on sound bites at work too, right?
Yeah.
So the same issues.
This is why the teamwork is so important, and that's why companies, and we're working with some major companies doing this work because they recognize they need it.
It's called Group to Team. You can look on YouTube, or you can go to the website grouptoteam.com. You got to come back in a month, because you just opened up a whole can of worms here. Is that if we're living in sound bites, if we're looking for instant gratification, the same stuff is happening at the workplace. How do you transition from getting out of your car to going into your workplace, right?
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to come right back on the show we call The Business Life. Just got a couple of minutes left. I'm going to give you a little editorial on something that's been bugging the heck out of me, and it's called political correctness. And my dear new friend, Rich Samuels, and my old friend, Freeman Michaels, I want them to chime in. We'll be right back. It's KHTS AM 1220. Welcome back. I got to have these two guys back. I hope you enjoyed the show today. Rich Samuels, author, My Life at the Bottom of the Food Chain, a trilogy of 3 books that if you've got teenagers, keep playing this country music, Justin, because I love it, baby. He'll be back many times. And then my dear friend, Freeman Michaels, I will try to get him back sooner than later. But I want to talk about something that just bugs me every day, you guys, and that is political correctness is just, it's ridiculous. I mean, and what's causing me to say this is this lawsuit that Florida's bringing against Donald Trump's campaign manager. I mean, really? He was trying to get her out of the way. The Secret Service is on one side of him, and she's trying to cut in between the Secret Service and Donald Trump. All he was doing was trying to push her out of the way, and it's just ridiculous what is going on in our society.
He's ruffled a couple people's feathers, Coach. I think it has less to do with political correctness in that regard.
I can't stand Donald Trump. I'm just saying that really a prosecutor is bringing a case.
Yeah.
But all forms of our world is now political. We're afraid to say anything, and so now people are holding back, which when you hold back, what does it create? Frustration, right?
Yeah. I think you have two extremes. I think people are, again, jumping on the soundbite wagon to get media, splash media, and then you have people who are reticent to say anything because the world...
Well, like I say, why are you wearing your hair this way? We're dear friends. I would say maybe change your hairstyle. But if I said that to you, it would hurt your feelings, which I'm doing right now.
What's wrong with my hair, Coach?
Look at Rich's hairstyle.
My hair's fantastic.
Right I'm just saying, it's just, what happened to teasing each other? What happened to...
No,
we tease each other. Still exists.
Right.
I think the problem with political correctness is where is that line?
Yeah.
Yes.
And
we don't laugh anymore. We don't smile anymore because we're afraid we're going to hurt your feelings. Come on, guys.
Well, there's extremes. I mean, I don't know. I think, again, in the soundbite world, so much is put up out in the world. And you know this from YouTube. People are brutal in their comments. Like, they have no filter. It's horrific.
No, it's. I mean, actually, the second book is all about that.
There's a lack of civility.
But the problem with political correctness is that everyone has a different definition of just what that means.
Totally.
I wouldn't have even thought of that Trump situation as political correctness.
Oh.
It's just sort of a muddled situation down there. But I wouldn't even look at it in that perspective. Which is, I find it interesting that you're looking at it from a slightly different perspective. But the problem and the challenge with political correctness is to look at it.
So you guys have never been through a crowded airport and kind of pushed your way through? No?
I'm not defending it. I'm just saying I didn't look at it from that perspective.
Will you both come back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Both of you have great voices. I mean, you each need to have your own radio show. It's ridiculous. Yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what an honor to have you tune in during the week on KHTS AM 1220. Don't forget, we have our own app. Go to the App Store, download the app, and you can take us anywhere. And our podcast will be on at 6 o'clock tonight. If you want to go to YouTube, you can see our shows on YouTube, all our shows on YouTube. Just go to hometownstation.com. I'll see you soon, real soon. Coach Ron Tunick on The Business of Life.